11, Circle of Life in Jesus' Name, Part 3, Chapter 20. It's November 9th, Saturday afternoon, Rosewood Sports Arena, Los Angeles, California. Gabe smiled at Taylor as she jumped up and cheered for the third round of Sarah's first fight. Hey, Tay, so tell me, have you ever thought about fighting in the challenge? She smiled. When I was a little kid, I did. I told Dad I wanted to fight like Aunt Jeffy did. Well, how old is little? 'Cause you're still little. She laughed. When I was maybe 8 or 9. He nodded. And now? She shrugged. I still think it would be cool, but I'm so busy with school and now dance. But you graduate in the spring and you'll have time. She nodded. Yeah, but you know what? I'm not sure if I can do it. I mean, I've watched Granddad train you guys. I don't know if I have what it takes. Well, you definitely have the talent and the skill. All you have to do is get in shape. Well, it has been a dream of mine. You just need a little confidence. Maybe do some smaller tournaments to get a feel for it, some local tourneys, and if you do well, it will help you decide if you should pursue that dream. She smiled. Actually, that sounds like something I could do. Gabe nodded. I would love to see you fight in a tournament. If you would love to see it, then maybe I'll do it. He frowned. No, Tay, you can't do it because I would like to see it. You have to do it because you want to do it. Well, I do want to, and I want you to be proud of me. I am proud of you, silly. You're the best girl I know. The best. She smiled. Do you think I could actually represent my family in a challenge one day? Yeah, I do. You can do anything you put your mind to, and I know for sure that your dad and granddad won't let you fail. Well, I'd have to get my second degree to fight in a challenge. He nodded. Something to work for. I'll support you in any way you need. New scene. Young Eric smiled at Jordan when she placed her hand on his leg. Is your ankle bothering you? He asked. Not too much. I'm okay right now. How are you feeling? I'm feeling great. I'm going to go back for my second warm-up when Caleb comes out to fight. I'm really hungry. I'm not supposed to eat anything else, but I'm thinking one of your mom's cookies would be so good right now. Well, if you're not supposed to eat anything else, you'd better obey Grandmaster Kino. I'm going to go ask him. He rose and went to speak to his grandfather. Jordan watched and saw Grandmaster Kino look at his watch, then smile and nod. Young Eric headed to 2 concessions. He was accosted several times, patted on the back, kissed on the cheek, wished luck, told to kick butt, asked for autographs and selfies. He finally made it back with a huge load of goodies for everyone, including the 9 little ones. He sat back down next to Jordan, handed her a cookie, and peeled away the wrapping from his own giant cookie. I think I just personally bought out your mom's cookies. Jordan giggled. They really are so good. Eric took a big bite and closed his eyes in ecstasy. They really are. Jordan turned and glanced over at her mother, who was smiling and talking with Mrs. Kino and with Bella Adams. Her mom had little Emily on her lap. Jordan smiled and turned back to 3. I don't think I've ever seen my mom so happy. Not ever. Eric glanced up at the sweet lady. She smiles all the time now, Jordan said. I never really noticed that she didn't smile before, but now that she does smile, I realize it's unusual. And she's not tired all the time, and she's not struggling to make ends meet anymore. She actually has friends. And I think she's adopted all these little children as her own. And all of this is thanks to you 3 and your family. Eric smiled. He remembered the first time he'd met Jordan's mom. He had a strong need to step in and help the situation. He hadn't really done anything, but his father had made a huge impact, and his mom had befriended Jewel and taken her under her wing. How grateful he was to them. His eyes moved to Jordan. Every time he looked at her, his heart swelled with emotion. They'd known each other 10 weeks, but it felt as if he'd known her forever. She smiled at him. What are you thinking? I was thinking about how much I love you. I was thinking that your face is almost healed. I was thinking that your hair has grown longer and that it is really pretty tonight the way it's shining in the lights. And I was thinking of kissing you. Kissing me? Here in sight of all these people? He grinned. Let's do an experiment. I'm going to lean over and kiss you. A real kiss. A long kiss. And let's see if we can make the news, or at least go viral. She smiled. Well, I would never turn down one of your kisses. Good to know, he murmured, as he reached out and placed his fingers under her chin, turned her face toward him, and leaned over and kissed her. The kiss was soft and deep and long, just as he promised. When she tried to pull back after what she thought was long enough, he pulled her closer and continued, slanting his head the other way. After a long while, he slowly relinquished the kiss, pulled back, and smiled at her. That should do it. She giggled. They both turned their heads back to watch the fight when Sarah got hit hard by her second opponent in the third round. Uh-oh, she was doing so well, Jordan said. Eric smiled. She's okay. She's already won the first 2 rounds. As long as she stays up for the next minute, she'll win. She did, and the fight ended, and her hand was raised as the winner. The announcer came back into the ring, and there was a presentation of the beautiful trophy to Sarah. She and her opponents were quickly interviewed, and then a local cheerleading team entered the floor, followed by a large group of acrobats, demonstration teams, stunt duos, and board breakers, who all sat in the center of the floor off to one side of the ring. The cheerleaders did a cheer for each side of the arena and were followed immediately by one of the demo teams. Bree turned to Jeffy. Remember at the first challenge and you wanted to be a cheerleader so bad? Jeffy laughed. I remember, and you were so sweet to indulge me. I remember too, Ricky said. I remember the little outfits you wore. Who could forget those? Toby added with a smile. Caroline giggled. That seems like forever ago. Fun times, Toby said, though it wasn't so fun for you that year, Rick. Yeah, it was a tough year, but also an awesome year. Bree and I got together and got married. We got pregnant with young Eric, and you guys were pregnant with Brody, and Beth was pregnant with JoJo. We survived a bunch of bad stuff, yeah, but Tommy went to jail for life, so that was good. They all nodded as their minds went to the hard things that happened, but no one spoke them. Well, what bad things happened? Jewel asked. Oh, so many, Bree answered. Ricky was kidnapped and tortured. Jeffy was briefly taken, much like Josie was this year. Mom broke her leg. I was shot in the chest. Mom's bodyguard was murdered, and Jeffy's bodyguard was severely injured in a car accident. And Eric, well, a bad guy messed with his brain. But that's a story too long to tell here. It was a hard year, but also many good things happened too. Kind of like this year, Jules said. I mean, young Eric was kidnapped, Josie was taken, Jordan was hurt and drugged. But Jordan and Eric are now a couple, and my life has completely changed, and Peter can never hurt us again, thanks to Eric. Those 2 kids over there are no longer homeless, thanks to you all. My 2 kids have never been happier, and we've been shown that God is so good. Ricky and Bree both smiled. Jewel went on, and here I am, chatting with new friends, holding this gorgeous girl on my lap, and I am so happy. Life can be hard, but can also be good. So good. The hard things make us appreciate the good and teaches us and makes us strong, Ricky said. The group quieted and watched the entertainment for a while. As it came to an end, Ricky rose and kissed his wife. Grandmaster Keno rose and kissed his children and asked them to be obedient to their mother and then kissed his wife. And young Eric rose and kissed Jordan. Gabe rose to shake young Eric's hand. Taylor hugged her brother and told him to kick butt. Logan rose and hugged him. Joey and Cam both rose and kissed their wives. Jason and Justin rose to bow to young Eric and told him to be strong. And everyone else waved and smiled and admonished him to do good. Young Eric, his father, his grandfather, his Uncle Joey, and Uncle Cam made their way back to the locker rooms to work on his second warm-up. The preliminary male fighters, Caleb Rice and his 2 opponents, were entering the arena. It wouldn't be much longer now before young Eric took the ring and tried to prove that he absolutely could follow in his father's footsteps. New scene. Jeffy and her best friend Kimmy sat together chatting. They seemed to be quite serious in what they were talking about, and Kimmy's husband, Jensen Deal, couldn't help but overhear. Kim was the only child of Jason and Angel Lee. Jason was Korean, and Angel was a blonde bombshell Southern belle from Alabama. Kim had long, straight, dark brown hair, hazel eyes, golden skin, beautiful lips, high cheekbones, and was 2 years younger than Jeffy. Kim had been one of the few people who could put up with Jeffy's genius mind when she'd been an awkward child with a grown-up mind in a child's world. Kim loved Jeffy. Jeffy loved Kim. Jensen, an Ameritech agent, defied his boss, Jason Lee, and secretly dated his daughter. Jensen was also of mixed descent, part white, part African American. He had dark curly hair, brown skin, and green eyes. He was very good friends with Joey. And when Chief Director Lee caught Jensen and Kimmy making out in Eric Sr.'s study, he went after him. Joey intervened and had been thrown across the room. It's a story they'd love to tell at family gatherings. And now both Jeffy and Kimmy were pregnant, both due within a week of each other at the end of November, and both very much looking forward to becoming mothers. Just think, Jeffy said. 10 years ago, we were just teenagers, and here we are about to be responsible for another human being. Kim nodded her head. Those 10 years have flown by, and I've changed so much. I was such a silly girl when I was a teen. Shopping, boys, martial arts, and church, in that order. Jeffy laughed. You were not as shallow as you paint yourself, Kimmy, so stop. And you were the best friend to me. It was easy to be the friend of such a remarkable person, Jeffy. 10 years ago, you were like working on your second PhD. You were taking the world by storm. Jeffy sighed. 10 years ago, I was so in love with my boyfriend, and I didn't know that 2 years later he would break up with me and break my heart. And you were by my side for all that. Kim hugged Jeffy. Bless your heart. You were so pitiful. But you know, I really think it went down exactly the way it was supposed to go down. What do you mean? Oh, when Cam left, well, you focused yourself completely on your life calling, your mission. You threw yourself into it, and at the same time, he was throwing himself into his life calling. It was like you both had to go through that time before you could come together and be whole. That hard time made you reach out to God in a way that really brought you close to him. Even when you were at your lowest, like when you slept with that guy, even that had to happen to wake you up, help you to see the gift of grace in a real sense. Jeffy looked into Kim's beautiful dark eyes. That's deep, Kimmy. You know, I still think about that dark time in my life, and I feel so much regret. I haven't been able to forgive myself. She patted her tummy. I mean, like, I hope my little guy never hears about my indiscretions. Well, you need to forgive yourself, Jeffy. We're human. Well, you're superhuman, but still, we're not perfect. We need Jesus' gift. He forgives us. So you have to forgive yourself. Heaven knows I've done some pretty shocking things myself, but I'm human. We're not perfect. Jeffy nodded. The only perfect thing we can do is to strive perfectly to be perfect and to perfectly repent when we mess up. Kimmy smiled. You're so smart. I know, right? Kimmy laughed. New scene. Ricky opened the bathroom door and peered inside. His son stood over one of the sinks, both hands on the mirror in front of him, staring into his own eyes. I found him, Ricky said quietly to someone outside the door, closed the door, and walked toward his son. Young Eric's eyes shifted from his own to his father's in the mirror. Son, you okay? He nodded. Yes, sir. I'm just getting myself focused. Nerves? Not really. I feel pretty intense. Good. Young Eric pressed his lips together. You know, son, it doesn't matter to me if you win or lose. In my eyes, you can't fail because I'm already so proud of you. Young Eric chuckled. Thanks, Dad. Well, what's so funny? A granddad just said the same thing to me. Ricky shrugged. Well, I'm my father's son. I wish I was mine. Well, what does that mean? I mean, I'd like to measure up to you, Dad. Be as good as you. Be as strong as you. Be as perfect as you. I've shared with you the times I've fallen, Eric, and I'm thinking you won't make the same mistakes I've made. At least I'm hoping. So that means you actually are already stronger than me and more perfect than me. I've never seen anyone strive so hard to do the right thing. I'm so proud of you. And as far as I'm concerned, I think you have far surpassed me. Young Eric sniffed back his emotions, and Ricky smiled. Come on now, Eric. It's time to head out there and get this done. Eric nodded and looked back in the mirror into his own eyes again and nodded again. Let's do this. New scene. It's still November 9th, Saturday evening, Joe's Bar and Grill, Pine Forest, Georgia. Jericho Jones glanced over at the adorable blonde who was currently licking barbecue sauce off her upper lip. Her blue eyes glanced up at him, and she smiled sheepishly. He smiled back. You missed a spot. He reached over and used his thumb to wipe a tiny bit off her cheek. She shrugged. Sorry, but it's hard to be neat and tidy when you eat ribs, especially Joe's ribs, Rose said. He nodded and glanced around at the place. It was packed. His 5 buddies, who were also his employees, were here tonight. Jimmy Calloway, Max Hooks, Luke Jackson, Micah Ferguson, and Jalen Shipley. 2 of Rose's sisters, Daisy and Lily, were also here, and a slew of other people that Jericho didn't know. Violet and CJ had opted to watch the big fight at the Tanner's home with Rose's mom, dad, and little sister. He frowned as he thought about CJ. He still hadn't been able to really speak with him and find out why CJ had disappeared all those years ago and what was going through his head now. What had Jericho done to cause the guy who'd been his best friend for almost his whole life not want to even speak to him? He wondered if he had the facts wrong about what went down all those years ago. What you thinking about, Jericho Jones, that has you looking so serious? He smiled at Rose. Sorry, I was thinking about CJ. Do you want to share with me what happened? He looked into her eyes. Maybe. Her eyebrows rose. Really? I didn't expect that. He smiled at her. I think I can trust you with the facts, but this is not the time and place to have such a long discussion. We'll do it soon. But there is something you have to promise me. What's that? Well, I know Violet's your twin, and I assume you two are very close? Rose nodded. Very. So the promise is a difficult one. I want you to promise me that you won't tell Violet what I tell you. Rose frowned. You want me to keep secrets from my sister? Well, the thing is, if CJ hasn't told her, there must be a good reason, and it wouldn't be right for me to come in here and ruin it. I'm sure he'll tell her when he feels the time is right. Rose nodded. That's the same thing my father says. Jericho's eyes widened. I guess your father knows the facts, huh? She nodded. Yes, and he assures me that neither of you have done anything wrong. Jericho blinked but didn't say anything more. The place got quiet as Josh Turner, the manager, turned up the volume on all of the TVs, and the announcer on the screen went to the center of the ring. New scene. We're back over across the country at Rosewood Sports Arena, Los Angeles, California. People were scrambling back to their seats from the restrooms and the concession stands as the announcer made his way into the center of the ring. There was a rumbling of the sound of bass drums as the Marine Division drum line made their way forward and performed a thrilling precision drum routine. Finally, they ended, dividing into 2 groups, lining up along either side of the pathway from the entry to the ring. They stopped playing, came to attention, then lifted their drumsticks straight up into the air, and then, at the same time, slightly forward to form an arch, again imitating the Arch of Sabers. The announcer began the introductions of the 3 opponents that young Eric would face. 28-year-old Cy Staton, a 4th-degree black belt, Taekwondo national champion. 30-year-old Dale Johnson, ex-military, special forces, 3rd-degree black belt in both karate and Jiu-Jitsu, and 32-year-old Brevin Ford, master of Ford martial arts, and an 8th degree black belt in Chung Kuk Do, 3rd degree black belt in Tang Soo Do, and 3rd degree black belt in Taekwondo. He announced all of their masters and or trainers as they lined up beside the fighters. There was a pause, and then he began speaking again. And now, ladies and gentlemen, representing the Kino family in the Kino Challenge, 3rd degree black belt in Zendo Ryu, which includes a 3rd degree black belt in 2 forms of karate, Tang Soo Do, and in Taekwondo, and is also trained in Muay Thai, Shaolin Kung Fu, and Krav Maga. He is the youngest competitor to ever compete in the top level of the Kino Challenge, 20-year-old Eric Kino III. The arena erupted. Eric is accompanied by his grandfather, Grandmaster Eric Kino, his father, Grandmaster Eric Kino Jr., whom we all lovingly know as Ricky Kino, his uncle, current Kino Challenge champion, Master Joey Adams, and another uncle, Master Cameron Wallace. The crowd watched as young Eric and his entourage circled the ring, bowing to each of the opponents and their teams. The show of respect was always a stirring spectacle. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for our national anthem, which tonight will be sung by Gracie Nash and Logan Adams. Logan and Gracie stood on the floor, each with a mic in their hands. Logan began to sing a cappella, and his clear, beautiful, full voice was mesmerizing. Gracie came in with the harmony, and together they gave one of the best renditions of the national anthem that anyone had ever heard, and the lengthy applause was evident of that. The VIP section sat still as they waited for the first fight to begin. Young Eric and Cy Staton moved to the center of the ring, bowed to the referee, bowed to each other. Jordan felt like her heart might explode. 3 had such an intense look on his face. She'd never seen him like that. The fight began, and 30 seconds later, Gabe and Logan looked at each other with stunned expressions. Jordan's and Taylor's mouths opened in surprise. What in the heck had just happened? Not only had this never happened in a challenge, but they'd never seen young Eric in this light. Even Ricky and Joey seemed surprised, pleasantly surprised. The rest of the family was on their feet, applauding, cheering, whistling for young Eric. Jordan whistled several times, then turned and threw her arms around Taylor. The arena was going crazy. Social media was blowing up, and the sports channel people were stunned. Well, folks, that didn't take long, did it? I guess we can all see that Eric III may be young, but he is not to be trifled with. Let's play that back. Those watching TV were able to see that Cy Staton never stood a chance. He tried to throw the first punch, but young Eric ducked and punched and spun and kicked and punched again, and then came in with a double roundhouse kick. The kick to the head was blinding fast and so powerful that it knocked Cy out immediately. He was being tended to, and the crowd uttered a sigh of relief when he finally sat up. Young Eric knelt beside him. Hey, Cy, you okay? Cy nodded and allowed Eric to help him up to stand. Young Eric's hand was raised into the air by the referee, and Eric immediately hugged Cy. Hey, kid, you're no joke. Good job, Cy said. Thanks, Eric replied. He bowed to him and then went to Cy's master and teachers and bowed to each one before he returned to his corner. Good job, Eric, his grandfather said. But don't get cocky. This next guy is not going to be that easy. Drink some water. You don't want to rest, do you? No, sir. What's your next sequence? Ricky asked. Young Eric repeated it to him quickly. Ricky nodded and glanced at his father, eyebrows raised. Neither of them had expected Eric to be so focused and so intense. He had to wait about 5 minutes before his opponent was set and ready to fight, since he hadn't expected to be called upon so quickly. They came to the center of the ring and bowed. This guy, Dale Johnson, was ex-military. He was bigger than young Eric, taller and heavier. The first round of the fight, neither one of them landed a punch or kick. But the second round, Eric's speed outdid the bigger guy, and young Eric landed several hard kicks and a few punches and had one takedown. In the beginning of the third round, Dale knew he had to get back some points, and he came at Eric with everything. But Eric Sr. knew he would do that and told young Eric to time it right, and he'd have him. And he did. This time, he landed 2 lightning-speed, powerful kicks to the head and again knocked out his opponent. And again, the arena erupted, and the unseen crowd watching on TV and social media went crazy. Young Eric paid his respects to Dale and his team, and they came to do the same to the Keno team. And finally, Eric sat in his corner. "I need to rest this time," he said quietly to his grandfather. While Eric rested, dancers from America Can Dance performed an amazing number, and then Toby, Gracie, and Logan sang another couple of numbers with Logan at the keyboard and both Toby and Grace on guitars. Once again, the audience was mesmerized. Jordan leaned over to Gabe. "Eric's doing so good, isn't he?" Gabe nodded. "You think?" "He's doing great." Taylor grinned. "I am so proud of him." "Me too," Jordan said softly. "And Logan is doing great too, isn't he?" Taylor said. "He's so talented," Jordan said. "Both these guys, they're about to be big stars." Gabe nodded. "They're rocking it. You know, Logan is very cool. He recently told me that being a big star doesn't mean anything to him, and the only reason he wants to be a star is it gives him the influence and the opportunity to touch the lives of others." Taylor smiled. "Gabe, have I told you lately that I love you?" He smiled. "That's cool, but I didn't say it. Logan did." "And again, I love you. You are always so humble, and you always remember to put things in perspective. Can you be any more perfect?" Gabe frowned. "So, do I come across as trying to be too perfect? Like some uppity goody-goody?" "No, silly, you're just so adorable," Jordan said. He sighed and shrugged. "Whatever. I'm going to try to not be so adorable." "Why?" Jordan asked. "'Cause when you say that, it makes me feel weird." Taylor and Jordan giggled. And that makes you more adorable," Taylor said. "Oh, Gabe, I am so in love with you." He sighed. When the next fighter walked to center ring, the crowd got silent. Gabe and Logan looked at each other. This guy, Brevin Ford, would be like fighting a young Grandmaster Keno. He owned his own martial arts chain. He was close to being a grandmaster. Young Eric was going to have to dig deep, and Master Ford had just watched what Eric did to the other 2 opponents, so he'll be ready. He'll be cautious, and he'll be brutal. He'll make sure he doesn't make the same mistakes. Still, young Eric had 2 grandmasters guiding him. That was an advantage. First round, young Eric held his own, which was actually a relief. That meant he had a chance against this master. In the corner, young Eric was breathing hard. He drank some water, rinsed his mouth, and spat. Joey wiped his face. Grandmaster Keno frowned. He'd been watching his grandson, watching his face, watching his eyes. He hadn't smiled, not even when he won the first 2 matches. It suddenly dawned on him what was going on. "We're going to change up the sequence, Eric. I think I just realized what's going on in your head. I've decided you're not going to bide your time. You're not going to start with defense. You're going to strike hard and fast, and you're going to get the heck out of that gold mine." Young Eric only nodded, his eyes looking straight ahead. That's exactly what he wanted to do. Eric Sr. and Ricky eyed each other and nodded. "You're not going to the 3rd round. This is it. This is it," Eric Sr. said. Young Eric went out and fought for his life. He fought to save Josie. He fought to get back to Jordan. He fought to see his family. He fought for his brothers. His thoughts were way ahead of what Master Ford could compute. Eric came at him without having to think. Every offensive sequence was utilized. It leapt out of him automatically. His speed was unbelievable. His stamina was strong. His energy was high. Master Ford stumbled under the onslaught, and young Eric whipped around, kicked twice, and the man went down. The crowd's roar was deafening. Eric bounced away and waited. The crowd flew into the air when the KO was called. Eric immediately went to Master Ford's side and to make sure he was okay. The referee raised Eric's arm in the air. He took a deep breath and nodded like he knew it was okay for him to breathe again. He finally smiled and turned and hugged Master Ford and then went to the Ford team and bowed to them and then met his team center ring. His father smiled at him and hugged him, lifting him up off the floor. His two uncles hugged him, smacked his back, ruffled his hair, and then he turned to his grandfather. "Sir," young Eric said reverently, "thank you." He bowed deeply. Eric Sr. returned the gesture and then smiled and hugged his grandson fiercely. The announcer came center ring. "Eric, come talk to the world a moment." Joey and Cam grabbed him and shoved him forward. "Eric, do you have anything you'd like to say?" He smiled. I want to say thank you to Master Ford for participating in the challenge. He's a beast. All three competitors tonight were, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to face them." He paused and took a few breaths. "I'm also grateful to my father and grandfather who are so good at training and making their students believe in themselves. Mostly, I'm grateful to God. I always want to stay close to Him and do His will. He's blessed me, and I'm grateful." "Well, I think we can all agree that you did a great job tonight." "Thank you, sir," he grinned. "I was worried that I was going to be the first Keno to lose a Keno challenge, and I'm greatly relieved." The announcer and the audience laughed. "Brevin Ford," the announcer motioned to the other fighter, "come join us." Master Ford stepped up next to young Eric and put his arm around him. "What would you like to say?" "Well, like the other two fighters said who faced this guy," he said as he squeezed Eric, "I'm humbled. I think we all thought, all right, this kid is only 20 years old and he's only a third degree. Finally, someone might be able to take down the Kenos." The audience laughed again. "But maybe the young age is to his advantage and not his detriment. And though he's young, I think he's the toughest competitor I've ever faced, and I've faced a lot of them." Eric looked up into the man's face and nodded a thank you for the compliment. And there you have it. Now, I'd like to introduce to you Grandmaster Sun Chen, the president of the National Martial Arts Coalition. An older gentleman wearing a suit and tie stepped forward and took the offered microphone from the announcer. "Thank you. I'm honored by my dear friend, Grandmaster Eric Keno, to come here tonight to present the trophy to the winner of the Keno Challenge. And after I do that, I have a special presentation to make, so everyone stick around." A young female black belt walked forward holding a large, round crystal sphere attached to a marble base with Keno Challenge Champion engraved on a gold plaque. Inside the crystal sphere was a tiny replica of a tied black belt that encircled a ruby heart. "I've always loved this trophy design," Grandmaster Chen said. "Grandmaster Keno says belts and trophies are just a small token of skills that a martial artist possesses, and that the real black belt is what's inside the heart of the artist. I present this beautiful championship trophy to the youngest ever to possess it, Eric Keno III." Grandmaster Chen took the trophy from the young lady and handed it to Eric, and they bowed to each other. Another young black belt, this one a boy, walked into the ring holding another trophy. This one was also a sphere, but this one looked like the world, the earth. The world was encircled by a black belt and was held up by a large pair of golden hands. And then a second pair of crystal hands held the golden hands. And all of this was on beautiful mahogany base with a gold engraved plaque. Grandmaster Chen spoke again. "This next presentation is a Lifetime Achievement Award and was voted on by 4,000 members of the World Martial Arts Association. It is an award that we'd like to present to a very special man, a man we almost lost earlier this year." In the audience, Gabe's eyes filled as he realized who they were talking about. The entire Keno entourage became filled with emotion, and they all turned their eyes to Eric Sr. He stood calmly in the corner of the ring, his hands clasped behind his back, his face looking grim. "This man is a Black Belt Hall of Famer, a Mark Grand Champion 4 times over, the founder of Kino Martial Arts, the force behind Ameritech Security, the philanthropist behind not only the 3 foundations spoken of earlier tonight, but of more than 20 foundations worldwide. And those those are just the ones we know about. He selflessly works behind the scenes every single day to, as we like to call it, teach a man to fish. He sets a perfect example every day of how a Christian man should live. He's devoted to God, to his family, to all of God's children, to his country, and to the world. He has used his skill in the martial arts to touch the hearts of millions of people around the world. He will say that he's just a teacher, but he is so much more than that. When he was a little boy, he said he wanted to teach the world. Well, he has indeed accomplished that. He teaches the world through example, and the good works he does has affected millions of people. Gabe looked again over at Grandmaster Kino and saw him shake his head ever so slightly. Gabe thought that meant he either didn't agree with what the man was saying, or he didn't like that the man was saying all of these things. Gabe was curious to see what Grandmaster Kino would say when he accepted the trophy. I could go on and on about this man's accomplishments, but we'll run out of time. Earlier this year, back this past August, when I heard that Grandmaster Kino had been murdered, my heart was broken that he'd left this world without knowing how much we all love him and appreciate him for all the good he's done. When we joyfully heard that he'd survived, many of my constituents came to me to get this process started. So, we would like to present this Lifetime Achievement Award to a man who has, through the martial arts, brought healing and love to the world and has had a lasting impact on the people of this world. To a man who's done immeasurable good and is my good and honored friend, Grandmaster Eric Kino. Grandmaster Chen motioned over to the corner to Eric Sr., and Eric drew a deep breath and came forward to accept the trophy. Grandmaster Chen bowed deeply. Eric accepted it and looked at it closely. He then stepped back and bowed to Grandmaster Chen. Please, Eric, say a few words. Eric handed the trophy to Ricky and took the microphone. Well, this was a surprise, Eric said with a smile. I really appreciate the sentiment behind the giving of this award. We always want to acknowledge those who do good in our world, and we want to do that so that it will encourage others to do the same. Because if we all work together, we can do God's work. So, feed the hungry children, help the single moms, lift up the afflicted like the sick or the handicapped. We can work hard ourselves and teach others to work hard. We can fill our hearts with love and compassion. He sighed. Though I have to disagree with this award because I am no one special, I am not a big deal. I have made many flaws, and I have to work to overcome those flaws every day. Yes, I do try to do God's work here, but let's give all glory to God and not to me. So I'll accept this award so that I can in turn offer this award to God, to my Father. Still, I'm very honored by Grandmaster Chen and those who voted to give me this award. I'm humbled by that show of love. I'd like to express my gratitude. I'm grateful every day for the opportunity to serve others in any way that I can. I realize that sounds ostentatious, but what I mean is I'm alive, and I can move around and speak and interact, and I don't take those things for granted anymore. I'm grateful for my very lovely and very sweet and very strong wife, and for my beautiful children, the new ones and the old ones, and for my family and friends. I'm grateful that they also work very hard to do God's will. I'm so very grateful for that. So really, this award goes out to all of you who continue to do God's work behind the scenes, where no one sees but God. You are the true heroes. I pray we will all continue to work hard and fill our world with love and kindness. However, and I'm sorry, but I always give a caveat to that statement. We should love people, but we can't and shouldn't love sin. Do not compromise with or tolerate evil. Love the sinner, but not the sin. Keep that in mind as you go about your business of loving the world. It takes strength to keep that in mind because people don't want to be told that what they're doing is wrong. But truth is truth, and all we can do is tell the truth. What people do with that truth is, again, between them and God. Be strong, be in love, trust God. He turned and smiled at Grandmaster Chen. Thank you, son. You know I love you, and you know I'm going to get you back for this. Grandmaster Chen laughed. I look forward to it. The spectators stood and applauded. The Kinos waved, and they and Grandmaster Chen left the ring. The announcer thanked everyone for an amazing night and said good night. Young Eric immediately sought his girl. Jordan was struggling through the crowd to come down a few rows to get to him. Gabe and Logan suddenly lifted her under each arm over the seats to the floor and set her down in front of Eric. He smiled down at her and then frowned. Jordan, why are you crying? I'm just so happy for you three. You did it. You were so awesome up there tonight. You won, and I'm so happy for you. Aw, baby. He moved forward and took her face in his hands. Were you worried? She laughed. Yes. I'm sorry. I was. I knew how important it was to you. You said numerous times that you didn't want to be the first one in your family to lose a challenge, and I'm so proud of you and so relieved, he finished for her with a grin. She laughed. Yes, I'm relieved. I mean, the day I met you on the highway and you took me to your mom's and sister's birthday party. That was 10 weeks ago. That same day you were asked to compete, so I've only known you under the pressure of training for the challenge. And now it's over, and you won, and you proved yourself to the world, and I am so relieved and so happy. He moved closer. Well, I'm so sweaty, and I'm sure I'm smelly, but I want to kiss you. Please kiss me, 3. He took her mouth. She threw her arms around his neck. He pulled away. It feels good, doesn't it? I agree. There was a pressure there that's gone, and it feels so good to kiss you and to have you in my arms, and there's nothing pressing except getting your foot better and you studying for your exams. She smiled. I'm so happy. Thank goodness you kicked butt. He laughed. You really didn't think I would, did you? She shrugged. I didn't know. I mean, the world was saying that you were young and untested, and this would probably be the time that the Kinos don't actually win the challenge. Well, you can't listen to the media, babe. You should know that by now. She nodded and turned as more members of the family moved forward to hug and congratulate him. He shook hands, accepted hugs and kisses. Both little Nate and Manny were lifted up into his arms for a few minutes, and then Angelina and Noah, and then Abe and Ledger, and then Emily and Kelston. His Aunt Breeze and Aunt Bella hugged him. Aunt Jeffy moved forward with a smile and placed her hand on his face. Eric, I'm so proud of you. Thanks, Aunt Jeffy, he said. She frowned. Are you in pain? Young Eric's brows rose. No. Jeffy looked to Jordan. Are you? Jordan shook her head. No, ma'am. Jeffy's brow furrowed, and then she smiled. Oh, well, I think it's me. She put her hand on her swollen belly. Must be having some Braxton Hicks, though it seemed like it was someone else. Very strange. She smiled. So, are we going out to celebrate? Young Eric smiled. We have a reservation for the party room at the Bayside Grill. Fantastic. See you there. Gabe grabbed Eric. Bro, I mean like, you rocked it. Do you realize you had 3 knockouts? 3. No one has ever done that. Master Joey had 2 a couple of times, but no one has ever done 3. You are totally on my hero list. You saved that list for real heroes, Eric murmured. Taylor jumped up and hugged her brother. Eric, OMG, I'm so happy. I was worried, and I thought Jordan was going to break my hand. She was squeezing it so hard. Young Eric glanced down at Jordan with his brows raised. So neither one of you had any faith in me. Taylor giggled and hugged him hard. Oh, shut up. We believed in you, but we love you so much we still worried. I'm so proud of you, my big brother. Eric hugged her back. Well, everyone, let me hit the shower, and I'll be right out. It's still Saturday night, but we're back across the country at Joe's Bar and Grill in Pine Forest, Georgia. Rose was grinning ear to ear. That was so freaking awesome. And to think, Lily said, Eric Keno used to flirt with me all the time. Daisy giggled. You had your chance. Now he's found a girlfriend. Lily nodded. Well, he's 2 years younger than me, and the last time he hit on me, he was 17 and still in high school, and I was 19, so, awkward. But I tell you, that is one really hot guy. Jericho smiled and glanced around at his buddies. He knew what they were thinking. They were thinking that Lily was one really hot girl. She and her sister both, of course, since they were identical twins. Well, that really hot guy will be here in a few weeks, Daisy reminded Lily, because they're all coming for Thanksgiving. Jericho grinned at that statement, as that statement prompted Micah to make his move. So, Lily, Micah Ferguson began, you're 22? She smiled and nodded. Yes, and I'll be 23 in a month. He smiled. Cool. Well, though I'm no Eric Keno, I am older than you by 3 years. What do you say you let me take you to dinner next Friday night? Rose immediately turned and looked the guy over. He was a good-looking guy, black hair, blue eyes, strong jaw, not as big as Jericho, maybe about the same as her brother, about 6 feet and muscular. His coloring was actually a lot like Gabe, though Gabe's hair was not black, it was a dark brown. Micah was an employee of Jericho's, so Rose supposed he was probably a good guy. Lily smiled at him. Well, I guess we could go do dinner. Micah handed her his phone. Let me get your number. Lily put her number in and handed his phone back to him. Micah smiled and held his phone up for all to see. And that, my friends, is how it's done, he gloated. Everyone laughed. And that is the end of chapter 20. Da, da, da.